Welcome to Euronews Now. Here are your headlines. The new German Chancellor hits the ground running. Olaf Scholz has kicked off his first diplomatic trip with a call for European sovereignty. The WikiLeaks whistleblower Julian Assange edges one step closer to extradition from Britain, following a court ruling in favour of the United States. The UK Health Security Agency finds the COVID booster shot provides 75% protection against mild cases of the disease. And onto the silver screen, we take a look at the favourite contenders for this weekend's European Film Awards. Hello and welcome to the programme. Olaf Scholz has wasted no time since being sworn in as Germany's new Chancellor. His first diplomatic trip in the role took him to Paris, as has been the norm for decades. Then he went on to Brussels for talks with European Union and NATO leaders. Shona Murray reports.
Olaf Scholz wants to pursue efforts to build a strong and sovereign Europe. Visiting Brussels for the first time as Germany's Chancellor, he was welcomed by familiar faces, like the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Together, they pledged to work to deal with urgent issues facing the bloc, including Russia and protecting Europe's borders.
Ja, und dann geht es in der Tat darum, dass wir eine starke, souveräne europäische
We want to ensure a strong, sovereign European Union, and that also means that we have a closely coordinated strategy when it comes to foreign policy. The great ambition now is to ensure that security and defence in Europe can be successful and that any threat towards an individual country is not tolerated. We are, of course, deeply concerned by the events unfolding along the Ukrainian and Russian border.
For Germany, other pressing issues include dealing with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and its economic impact. Climate change is also ranking high on the list of priorities, but this might be a potential point of friction with member states like France, as Germany is committed to phasing out nuclear energy.
This will be one of the first big testing questions of the Franco-German couple and how Brussels will play this. France is clearly committed to nuclear and argues that nuclear does not emit greenhouse gases, which is objectively true, and therefore should be counted as a green technology. Germany, in contrast, is clearly committed to phase out nuclear very rapidly.
Scholz's European tour also includes a face-to-face meeting with NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. Talks come ahead of an EU leaders' summit next week in Brussels, where security and defence are also set to be discussed. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
In Berlin, our reporter Jona Kalgren says Olaf Scholz will look to Poland to be a friendly ally, but will approach Hungary differently.
He has already indicated, and his foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, has indicated that they are willing to seek compromise and to seek contact with the Polish government. They seem to think that they might be able to get the Polish government a little bit more, at least, over on their side and form some sort of coalition with Germany in the middle, Poland on one side and France on the other side. That is at least the hope. When it comes to Hungary on the other side, there doesn't seem to be any hope that they can get Hungary over to their side, and they've already shown that they are ready to take a much harder line with Viktor Orban than they're going to do with the government in Warsaw. Part of that is obviously geographical. Poland is a neighboring country, Hungary is not, but part of it is also political. There is an election in Hungary next year. They might be speculating that Orban might lose that and the problem might be solved, and they might be speculating that something like that is not going to happen in Poland. So that's why you're seeing two different approaches to these two different countries.
You know, he's urged Russia to respect the integrity of Ukraine's borders. However, he also has to balance the delicate matter of the Nord Stream 2, the gas line from Russia into the EU. How is he expected to tackle talks with President Putin?
Well, it's difficult. When it comes to Nord Stream 2, he's under pressure from two sides. First of all, the Green party, which is an important member of his coalition government, and obviously Annalena Baerbock, the foreign minister, is a Green Party minister, they would take any opportunity to shut down this project once and for all. They would really jump at that if they could. However, the state where Nord Stream 2 is leading into, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, is a state in Germany that is run by the Social Democrats, and this state and other Social Democratic governors and politicians in Germany really want this project to go ahead and open up. So he's under pressure from both sides. What is going to happen is that he's probably going to do a very Merkel thing and continue this, a little bit of talking to Putin, a little bit of putting pressure, but not too much and not too little.
The German parliament has approved plans to make coronavirus vaccines compulsory for all health workers before the 15th of March next year. The Bundestag gave the green light for employees in hospitals, nursing homes and homes for the elderly. Staff will have to show proof of vaccinations or recovery from COVID-19. Nearly 80% of German residents have received 2 jabs. The Czech Republic is preparing new laws to make vaccinations compulsory for the over 60s and for those in selected professions. Firefighters, police officers and soldiers are among those likely to be required to have a jab by March next year. The new decree will not need parliamentary approval. 82% of Czechs over the age of 60 have had at least 2 injections. Employers in Armenia can now fire people who refuse to provide proof of vaccination or a negative coronavirus test. That's according to a new law approved by Parliament. The country's president, prime minister and a number of other officials are exempt from the legislation. New infections and deaths have dropped in recent weeks, despite just 23% of people being fully inoculated. A third coronavirus vaccine is key in the fight against the Omicron variant. That's according to the UK Health Security Agency, which says that the booster shot provides 75% protection against mild cases of the disease. The government body predicts that over 1 million new infections will be recorded per day in Britain if it continues on its current trajectory. Downing Street has cancelled this year's Christmas party, despite the UK government telling the public that it's OK to go ahead with festive celebrations. There is mounting public anger over 3 alleged government gatherings in November and December last year, while the country was in lockdown. Boris Johnson issued an apology after a video that emerged of his then Press Secretary, Allegra Stratton, appearing to joke about a Christmas party. 489 people in the UK died with COVID-19 on the 18th of December last year, the same day as one of the alleged events in Downing Street. Johnson has repeatedly said that he was assured that no party was held on that date in question. An inquiry has been launched. Chris Curtis is Senior Research Manager at the market research and insight agency Opinium. He told me that polls show that support for Boris Johnson is waning.
We've seen polls coming out showing Labour with quite a substantial lead. We've also seen some of the worst favourability ratings we've ever seen for the Prime Minister. Significantly more people now have an unfavourable view of him than a favourable view. It's quite rare in our profession to see such a dramatic shift over the course of the week, as we've seen over the past week. But I think it signifies the level of public anger with these accusations about these Christmas parties that were happening whilst the country was in lockdown. We've got another opinion poll out on Sunday. We don't know what that's going to show yet. But one of the key things is that there is incredibly little trust in the Prime Minister. This was sort of always true. Most polling has shown that people do sort of think Boris Johnson's a strong leader. He's the kind of person who can get things done, but he's not the kind of person who you can trust to tell the truth. And that's true this week, just like many others before. More people think that the moon landings were faked than think Boris Johnson is telling the truth about this alleged party that was happening last year. So I think it's a really, really difficult situation for him. We also have by-elections coming up in the UK. There's local elections next May. There's Conservative backbench politicians who are looking increasingly frustrated at the Prime Minister and no longer see him as the sort of electoral asset that they potentially did before. And I think that means we could end up in a situation in the coming months when a lot of those backbench MPs consider trying to move to replace him.
The Labour leader Keir Starmer has said that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is not fit to govern. Would it be wise for the opposition to urge the Prime Minister to step down at this point, or do you think it's better to simply wait?
The person who's most likely to replace Boris Johnson is the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak. He is, most polling shows, significantly more popular, and I think Labour would be much more nervous about going up against him at the next general election than going up against Boris Johnson. So I don't think it's necessarily in Labour's interest for the Conservatives to replace the current fairly unpopular leader with Rishi Sunak, who's a bit more popular. But look, I mean, the Labour Party is on the side of the country when they say Boris Johnson should resign. Our opinion poll out on Wednesday showed for the first time a majority of the country say they think the Prime Minister should resign. Even over a third of those who voted Conservative at the last general election think it's time for him to go, which is quite a dramatic finding.
The High Court in London has cleared the way to extradite the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to the United States, where he faces charges of espionage. Tag Enright has more from outside the tribunal in London.
It's reversed a decision taken by a lower court earlier this year that his extradition should be blocked because of the risk that he could kill himself if held in a maximum security prison in the US. Assange is being sought by Washington over an alleged conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defence information following the publication by WikiLeaks of leaked documents relating to the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. The judges here said they were reassured by promises from the US that he would get all the medical treatment he needs to prevent suicide, and that Assange could choose to be held in a prison in his native Australia. Assange's partner, Stella Morris, described the ruling as dangerous, misguided, and a grave miscarriage of justice. It is another milestone in a protracted battle to have him face prosecution in the US, during which Assange has spent years in hiding in the Ecuadorian embassy and also in prison here in London, while he waits for this legal process to reach its conclusion. But this is not the end of the story. Assange's team is expected to launch an appeal. Tag Enright, Euronews in London.
Following the ruling, protests were held outside the court, with many calling for the rights of journalists to be protected. However, the judgment does not mean that Assange will be immediately extradited. His case will now go to Westminster Magistrates Court, where a district judge will send it on to the Home Secretary, Priti Patel. Coming up after the break on Euronews Now, champions of press freedom. We take a look at this year's winners of the Nobel Peace Prize. Welcome back to the programme. Two journalists from Russia and the Philippines have been awarded a Nobel Peace Prize for their work to protect a free press. Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov have campaigned for improved protections for independent journalism, as Louise Miner reports.
The two journalists each will share the €990,000 after receiving their awards at a ceremony in Oslo. Maria Ressa is the first person from the Philippines to win the Nobel Peace Prize, but offered a bleak assessment of the journalism industry, saying the era of competition for news is dead. Dmitry Muratov is the editor-in-chief of the newspaper Novaya Gazeta, which is one of the rare independent media outlets in Russia. He used his speech to give a warning about the possibility of a war between Russia and Ukraine. The World Food Programme Director, David Beasley, also received a Nobel Peace Prize for last year for his efforts to combat hunger and for contributing to improve conditions for peace in conflict-affected areas.
Thank you. My goodness.
And for acting as a driving force in efforts to prevent the use of hunger as a weapon of war. He used his speech as a call to action to stop a hunger pandemic. Louise Miner, Euronews.
Hungary's top court has avoided ruling on whether European Union law overrides the country's constitution. The court was asked to review whether Hungary had violated EU rules by pushing asylum seekers back to Serbia. But judges said they could not rule on EU law authority, which is a long-running issue of debate within the bloc. At least one person has died following heavy rains in northern Spain. Streets have flooded and cars were submerged in the Basque Country region. Police have urged local people to only drive if absolutely necessary. Serbia has suspended 2 laws that would help mining giant Rio Tinto to extract lithium in the west of the country. The government has been under increasing pressure from demonstrators, as Rebecca Daunt reports.
Thousands of environmentalists marched on the capital for 2 consecutive weekends, blocking main roads and bridges. Protesters say the government's plan to lower the referendum threshold and confiscate private land serves foreign companies who take advantage of bulk and mineral resources, leaving tons of toxic waste behind. While the demonstrations are proving to be President Alexander Vucic's biggest challenge yet, he says he did not give in to peer pressure.
Without wide social consensus, we will not go ahead with the new law on expropriation. This is my appeal to everyone to get involved. But I'm sure and convinced that the government will, after my decision, agree not to send this law to the parliament.
Critics of the government say the Serbian Progressive Party has grossly ignored environmental concerns. However, lithium is considered one of the most sought-after metals of the future as the world shifts to more renewable energy sources. Supporters of the mine argue that the extraction of lithium carbonate and boric acid is essential for the trade to continue. Rebecca Daunt, Euronews.
The European Film Awards are being presented in Berlin on Saturday. The virtual ceremony will acknowledge the best of the continent's cinema. Clemence Waller takes a look at some of the hot contenders.
Bienvenidas, bienvenidos. Welcome to the announcement of the nominations of the European Film Awards.
1 month ago, the nominees were announced in Seville. The films coming from the 4 corners of Europe have been selected for major festivals, even the Oscars, and have received awards. Euronews was able to talk to the director of the European Film Academy.
That's the wonderful thing about our unique prize, the European Film Awards, is that we can really give an overview of all the different voices that are in Europe, from the east to the west, south and north. Younger, more seasoned filmmakers, everybody can be part of the European Film Awards. And I think that's the fantastic beauty of the awards that we can give every year, that we can make that visible and we can honor and give a stronger visibility to all these different voices in Europe.
The film selection of this competition reflects the diverse talent of Europe. It showcases voices like the one coming from Scandinavia in this Finnish film shot in Russia. Compartment number 6, winner of the Grand Prix du Jury at Cannes, tells the story of 2 strangers who meet during a long train journey. There is also the powerful story of Julia Ducournau, winner of the Palme d'Or at Cannes, for her gory thriller Titane. The film's lead actor, Vincent Lindon, nominated for the Best European Actor Award, spoke to us about a cinema he loves.
European directors have really grown, and even compared to Americans, there is a plethora of great directors. I'm not going to start naming them, but we can go from Lars von Trier to Pedro Almodovar, via Paolo Sorrentino.
Paolo Sorrentino is one of the favorites for his Hand of God, produced by Netflix, a quasi-autobiographical film about Naples, football and cinema. The movie is described as one of the director's most personal films produced to date. Another favorite is the Franco-British film The Father by Florian Zeller, which has already won 2 Oscars, including Best Actor for Anthony Hopkins. And lastly, an outsider from Bosnia, Quo Vadis Aida, which looks back at the Srebrenica massacre during the Balkan War in 1995.
Coming up on the programme, the final race to the finish line. We'll take a look at this weekend's Formula One showdown between Hamilton and Verstappen. Welcome back to the programme. This weekend is set for some unmissable sporting action. We're fast approaching the Formula One title decider in Abu Dhabi, which will round off a breathtaking season. We're joined now live from Dublin by our sports presenter, Will Dalton. Will, it's Hamilton versus Verstappen, Mercedes versus Red Bull. Who are you putting your money on?
Well, Rue, like I said last week, Listen, when Lewis Hamilton's back is to the wall, when the challenge is presented to him, he never seems to fail. I think also the fact that Max hasn't tasted victory since the US Grand Prix, I think it was back in September, and that Lewis has continually closed the gap. Mercedes have stretched out their lead in the Constructors' Championship as well. I think that's a lot of pressure for a young driver, even though we've seen how good Max Verstappen is, and he has closed the gap on Lewis in the kind of bigger picture, so to speak. I think that because Lewis has won those past few races, also the fact that, you know, he equaled Michael Schumacher's record last year. He stands, if he takes the victory this weekend, to go out on his own as the most successful racing driver of all time. They're the sort of things that fuel Lewis Hamilton and keep him motivated. And I think that will be enough to see him across the line ahead of Verstappen at the weekend.
Do you think their intense rivalry has attracted more people to the sport?
Completely. People love a sports rivalry. If we go back through the sports annals of time, back to Muhammad Ali, or if we look at more recently the likes of, say, Federer and Nadal on the tennis court, or we could, you know, look at Messi and Ronaldo, all those sports rivalries, people love a really, really good story. And I think it's really helped Formula One to come back from maybe a bit of a difficult period of where they were. The sport, I think, from my own point of view, is losing a little bit of that kind of attraction that it had. Even go back to the days of Michael Schumacher and the great spats that he had with the likes of Damon Hill back in the day. This is almost a repeat of this. And of course, those two guys want to win at all costs almost. So, you know, that's bringing people in. We've seen the fact also it's going free to air in the UK. It's such a big, momentous thing. As I said, Lewis Hamilton, on course, possibly the most successful racing car driver of all time.
And very controversial as well. Turning our attention to rugby now, the Men and Women's Player of the Year have been awarded. What can you tell us about the winners?
Well, the men's award has gone to the French scrum half, Antoine Dupois. He's had a really, really impressive season in a French jersey, but also for his club Toulouse. Of course, he was able to do the double for them, winning the French Top 14 and also the Heineken Champions Cup. And he said after receiving the award, it's really hard to believe that his name is now up there with some of the greats of world rugby. For the women's award, that went to 25-year-old English second row Zoe Aldcroft. She managed to captain the Red Roses for the first time this year, and they've really been dominant across all the games they've played. I think they're unbeaten in 18 tests, so it's no surprise that she becomes the fourth English woman to win the award.
Thanks for your insights, Will. That's all from us. Do stay tuned for more news.